And that's interesting. And the way you describe it, because I don't want people, like some people's heads are spinning. Right? It's always funny when I hear people say, oh, math, I can't do math, which we can have an education conversation, how we need to implement some more math strategies, right, in the education sphere these days because of how important it is. But this is where it comes down to everyone's situation is unique, right? And every building is unique. Every design plan is unique. All the materials are unique. And so what I learned about cost segregation is, it's not just like, oh, I'm a 20-year expert, like as if I'm testifying in court, right? I'm a 20-year expert. I'm going to say that's worth $2 a foot. I would imagine like cost segregation, there's some standardized numbers that, yes, as an expert, it matters, but there's some type of formulaic system and based probably on like some product lines and some like when we look at details of a light bulb, like, energy efficiency and all that, like we're talking about, I imagine that a lot of that comes into this conversation. Would you say that's true?
That is true. That is true. And so you actually are completely right. You're looking at certain products and you have to document that those were the products that were actually put in the building and they were built, as they were planned. A lot of visiting the building that the engineer does is making sure that the plans and what you plan to do is actually what you did do. So documenting all of that kind of stuff. But what is interesting is one of the areas where they're waiting on guidance from the IRS is that they're thinking that maybe you're really going to have to prove these were my electric bills the last 12 months. And after I made these changes, here's my electric bills the next 12 months. And I've proven that I'm now 50% more energy efficient.
And with rising energy costs, these formulas, Dawn, they're just getting deeper on it. They're just getting deeper.
Yes. Well, what I tell everybody is that don't worry about all the back end. I mean, you do need a basic understanding, but the best thing is just to have somebody look at it. And I mean, all firms, including ours, we would take a look at it and tell you from the onset, yes, no, before you've ever decided to move forward. So that is the best way. We had one recently, which is a great candidate, manufacturing lots of square feet, but they're manufacturing a product that generates a lot of heat. So they didn't put an HVAC system in there. So that made the HVAC system obviously doesn't exist. They can't get that component. That made the envelope fail because those work together because they've got, so they only got lighting. But we can see that from the drawings. We know that before we've ever started and done anything.
So you guys should be really in on the conversation. You should be at the table at the time of architecture design is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's where the planning comes in, Justin. That's why I have been moving. When you think about cost segregation, a lot of firms are at the tail end. A lot of CPAs get their information from their client. Let's say you're my client and you told me after your building is done, and now you're talking to me the next year, giving me your information, telling me, hey, built a building. Well, I was not able to help you at all with grabbing any of these incentives that you needed to think about in the design phase. So when you're just focusing on cost segregation, that is what tends to happen because you can easily do cost segregation way after the building is done, even if it's been up for several years. But a lot of these other incentives, you have to be in front of it. You have to really sit down. And that's where the tax planning piece really comes into it. And even with cost segregation, if you move what I call upstream and get in the table initially, you can affect change because then that developer, that builder, that investor can plan for that tax savings and then put that back into the project.
I think as interest rates started to rise, and I don't call it a bubble, this is nothing like 2008, right? So I grew up in real estate. My dad was in real estate my whole life. So I'm very familiar with the cycles of real estate personally, like, hey, food on the table at home, right? I'm very familiar with the cycles of real estate and the effects that can have. It's the concept, though, of when you're looking at a project as a whole and you want to get high rents, because that's what everyone's kind of concerned about right now, right? The rising costs of rents as interest rates rise, it's kind of like no one wants to touch the ball right now of, well, we got costs. It costs more for us to build this project. We got to charge you tenant more money to be in here. And people who are manufacturing are like, hey, labor's getting more, we're trying to get supplies from everywhere. Everywhere is kind of costing money. And so this is that concept, real practical effect of inflation. So planning for, hey, I want to get top dollar rents. You're going to have some top dollar things put inside of these units now because people are spending so much money. They want some some kind of justification. I think back to when like a lot of properties, and I don't want to say a lot, it just depends on your area you live in. I don't want to make it sound like everyone's got it, but like granite countertops, right? Like that seems to almost like in new construction be like the norm. Like, yeah, don't even tell me about granite. Like, don't even try to upcharge me on granite countertops, developer, builder. Like that's standard. Like, come on now. You can put it on paper all you want, but we all know the game.